Chipotle continues to break the law. Grannies on Etsy using weed. And what is capitalism exactly? Today on Good Work. Hello, workers of the world, and welcome to Good Work, a roundtable discussion about the world of working. Working is a major part of our lives, so we should talk about it. I'm James Mastriani.
I'm Matt Newell.
And I'm Jake Lloyd Bacon, and we are a bunch of entertainer types, writers, comedians, not professionals, not highly educated, not journalists, so do with that information what you will.
I went to Kent State University for a year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
How'd that year go?
Left with a 1.7 GPA and bloated liver.
I've never even heard of the Kent State.
You haven't?
No, I mean, do we have a new state that I was unfamiliar with?
Okay, here we go.
All right.
Oh my God.
Very sneaky. Sneaky.
Honestly, though, I haven't heard of Kent State. What state is that?
Fort
in?
Dead in Ohio.
Oh.
Where the National Guard, there was in the 70s, I think, or like 69, something like that. There was a big anti-Vietnam
Some people got
protest
shot.
Right. Oh.
at Kent State. Because
Okay.
at the time, Kent State was like a really big
Now that sounds vaguely
hippie
familiar.
college. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that why you went? You were like, I gotta be with my people.
I got to be with my people. No. Fuck the hippies. I went because I wanted to get out of Pittsburgh, and it was the cheapest college near me, but outside of Pittsburgh. But you know what? Looking back, I probably should have gone maybe to like Pitt or something like that, because I did not like Kent State. Sorry, Kent State.
Kent State, not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. All the students used to say Kent Reed, Kent Wright, Kent State.
Oh,
I say can't spell.
Can't spell either, yeah.
Well, in any case, do you guys want to talk about some labor news?
Yeah, we enough about college.
Enough about higher
Go for it.
education.
What does the lovely chief have to say?
The chief here. This one comes from the chief. Despite the city's, that's New York City's recent $20 million settlement with Chipotle Mexican Grill for violating workers' rights to stable schedules under the Fair Work Week law, the burrito chain has continued its unfair scheduling practices. So Chipotle, the short of the story is Chipotle pays $20 million for doing something wrong, continues to do something wrong. Welcome to America.
Yeah.
What?
Welcome.
I mean, do I need to read any more of this?
No, it's so funny. It's so funny. We have no control over, and it's funny because it's going to lead into a conversation in the second half of this, but like, there's no way of keeping these fucking massive corporations under control. Like, it's impossible at this point, right?
And in this instance, you know, they're cutting hours,
Yeah.
so that they don't have to worry about full-time employees. Because in a perfect world, they all just have excess of part-time employees that they can pay less and not give benefits to.
Yeah.
And it's got to the point where people, you know, the woman that they interviewed in this article, Teofila Guadalupe, I'm not sure if it's how you pronounce that first name. She worked for Chipotle for 5 years, and they've now cut 2 days from her normal schedule since the $20 million was paid, since the settlement happened and the new law that was put into place saying businesses can't do this. They're still doing it. She says they continue to bring in new workers, but then cut my hours. If they don't follow the regular schedule, then what's the point of this law? She's getting 22 hours with a family.
So they're bringing in new people to pay them less, right? Is that what it is?
And yes, and also
and
to
then
not give them full, so that way they can have just part-time workers.
And not give them benefits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Fuck it. Remember when Chipotle had those commercials where they were all kind of the pigs and shit? Like those. It was like this happy little fucking farm. What a crock of shit.
It's all a crock of shit.
Unless it's but you look back behind this fat happy farm and there's just this prison of humans that they're just slaughtering back there. Like,
yeah.
What the?
I mean, that
It
is.
is.
Listen, we don't tend to. You know, we're not. This isn't a sketch show, but I do feel like the commercial for Chipotle being kind and like doing like all of our chicken is grass fed, free roam, but the workers are in.
Our chickens have all been to Kent State for 2 years.
They lasted more than me, longer than me. The chickens,
and then back there we got James,
just in the back.
He's just being hung by his feet and swung back and forth as he's sorting various beef cuts.
Yeah.
I mean, do better, Chipotle. Also, wait a minute. There's a sentence. There's a sentence in the article. What is the sentence you always expect to see? Chipotle did not return a request for comment.
Oh shit! Interesting.
I do feel like it's in every single article.
Yeah.
They're probably just busy though. I'm sure they'll.
Did they call him during lunch?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a rush hour for them.
Yeah,
that's their busy time is lunch.
And where does Chipotle go to lunch? That's the real question.
Who wakes up the waker-uppers?
Who wakes them up? The funny thing about that, just to speak back to Matt, what he was saying before, and like I feel like this has become, I don't know if I've become more sensitive to it over the last few years, like commercials and advertisements and marketing and all that sort of stuff. And of course it's all that, like not even just companies, but like countries, and like there's marketing for everything that's just kind of like trying to find this would you call it an infantilization?
Yes.
Of like people out there that are like sentimental idealists who will totally buy that, like, oh, look at this. Like Chipotle is, has this like really.
Look at all these NFL players helping this lady move into her house.
Exactly.
Whatever the fuck it is.
It's always like, no.
It's like the NFL doesn't give a fuck about anybody.
They paid money so that you'll think that that's what they do.
Meanwhile, they're covering up brain injuries.
Yeah. It's truly, I feel like the whole, I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on just fucking marketing ploys and bullshit of branding and all that stuff.
The public perception.
Yeah.
And like optics.
Yeah.
Like, just give me a funny commercial.
Right.
Just make it funny and don't try
evil.
to fucking fool me that you're nice.
I agree.
And that you're in it, we're all in it together. With this pandemic. It's always like we're in this with you, Dove.
Because we treat we will
Dove.
We will treat our marketers and our companies the same way we treat comedians. We know you're awful, but if you're funny, we'll go, all right, at least you're funny.
That was good.
At least you're funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The last
That's what you're
don't say it. I know
you can edit it out. Yeah.
The last, I'm not, but the last little piece of the article is Dew, who is a member of the Service Employees International Union. They're just called 32BJ, and so I didn't want to just call them that because it sounds different. But the representatives says that the violations of the bill that was recently passed, they generally go, quote, undetected because the burden of reporting violations falls on the workers themselves. And they, one, probably don't know what their rights are, and two, are fear of facing retaliation, including hour cuttings and firings. So it is a thing where it's like, oh, I'm glad that we have this law that, they were fined once for. I'm glad we have all this stuff. But the reality is that the law's not going to do anything because no one's going to enforce the law because the people who need to report it are the victims who are afraid because they're victims in a position where they don't want to lose their jobs or have their hours cut because they're a whistleblower.
Exactly, yeah. Because
it's a snake eating its tail over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And like, I mean, we learned a couple weeks ago that like an industry like the amusement park industry can have an influence over like when children go back to school. Like, a worker has no fucking chance in this country. It's no chance.
Can I say a slight sidebar just because you brought that up? A couple of weeks back, my now fiance and I took a trip up to Pine Mountain north here, and we had to drive through Castaic on a day of the record heat wave at its peak, and there was a wildfire. And that is in that area. It is right across from Magic Mountain, the Six Flags. We're sitting there in just like stop and go traffic in the middle of the heat where the air conditioning is like slowly stopping to work because it's just 119 degrees outside. And I look over and it's just like there's like debris and ash from the wildfire like all in the air. There's dust and dirt from the road. It's 110 degrees and there is Magic Mountain open on Labor Day weekend because we went up on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
And it's like it's that lull and that's that quiet and we're just listening to music and we're both miserable because it's hot. And I go, Alexander, did you know that the amusement park industry like is the reason why kids go back to school afterward. And it was clearly that moment of just like, why the fuck are you telling me this right now? Like, why is this information that you're giving us? I was like, we talked about this all on Good Work. In fact, it was very enlightening. I didn't know this. And I had a real moment of Alexandra being like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Can we please get out of this traffic?
Yeah.
Also, who of all the times to be going to a theme park in Southern California on Labor Day weekend when it's like climate
heat wave?
Yeah. I mean,
we're in a heat bubble.
I can't imagine that specific park made its year the way other parks did on Labor Day that weekend.
It's also it sounds so like apocalyptic. Just
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Imagine like being
so
in line.
funny. Yeah, it's like
There's ash falling
yeah,
from the
like
sky.
there's wildfires everywhere.
90-minute wait for your next ride. You got 60 minutes to live.
Yeah.
You're like, I'll spend my last hour in line.
It's like, you know what? That Batman ride was fun, but I do have 3rd-degree burns from the sun.
Oh my God. So if any information you hear here, don't bring it up to your fiance because they won't like it.
Man, girlfriends hate talking about labor on romantic
on Labor
getaways.
Day.
They do.
Yeah.
We did. So that was the weekend that we did get engaged. Ever since then, I now refer to her as my ex-girlfriend, because
nice.
she likes
nice.
she likes that. Yeah, high five, guys.
Oh,
yeah, sitcom dads,
Ex-girlfriend.
sitcom dads, you kids.
Hooked
That's
up with
funny.
my ex last night. You know what I mean? She took the ring off.
Yeah.
Well, in more worker rights news and more, this is Starbucks Corner, but it doesn't include Starbucks. Includes the Apple, the Starbucks of smartphones, computers and shit like that.
Yeah.
This is from Reuters. Union groups, investors seek worker rights review at Apple. Apple.
So wait, they say that one more time.
This
So I
is
can follow
just the
it?
headline. Union
Yes.
groups,
Okay.
comma, there's
Yes.
a comma there. Investors seek worker rights review at Apple. So they're looking, labor groups and investors have filed a shareholder proposal asking Apple Inc. to review how it treats workers' rights.
Right. Let's see how things are
Looking
going.
to build on recent momentum to unionize workers at the iPhone makers or retail stores. So they're accusing Apple of trying to stop unionization. What's it called? Busting.
Yep.
I almost said squashing.
Union squashing.
Union squashing. The proposal filed by a group including the SOC Investment Group, a consultant to union pension funds, and an arm of the Service Employees International Union, accuses Apple of a quote-unquote apparent misalignment between its public commitments to things like freedom of association and accusations is tried to unfairly deter union organization.
Right.
So they're looking
all the
into
basic practices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So they're getting
Going to be under the microscope. And this is specifically the state for the retail facilities for the actual Apple stores.
The stores.
Right.
This is in New York City, the city.
I mean, in fairness, we should question any company who hires people, calls them geniuses, and then doesn't pay them or treat them properly.
Are they
Yeah.
geniuses or geeks? Who are the geeks?
Geeks is Best Buy.
Best
Oh,
Buy.
the Geek Squad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Apple
yeah.
geniuses.
The Apple geniuses.
Yeah.
At the Genius Bar.
And
the
AOC
Genius
is
Bar.
not in the Geek Squad. She's in the other squad.
She's in a
She's
different
in
the
just
squad.
The squad.
squad.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
They're not geeks.
No.
Uh,
And also not the one with the giant talking shark and Idris Elba. That's the Suicide Squad. There's a lot of squads out there.
okay,
There's
okay.
a lot of giant squads.
Never
Oh,
saw
I
the
see.
Suicide Squad.
you should definitely. Hey, you don't have to see it. I was gonna say you should, but
Well, which one?
If you're gonna watch one, watch
The.
the James Gunn one.
Yes.
I've
yeah.
heard that one's
Not
fun.
not
yeah.
Suicide Squad.
No, not at all.
The Suicide Squad.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Here's a quick question about like this industry. Is it even possible to have a small business in this industry, in the industry of like computer,
tech?
like making computers?
Oh, no. I can't imagine. Like, because if it's actual hardware, you mean?
yeah.
Well, it's also. I mean, it's like the car industry. There's some
Right.
things that are so complicated and
Right.
so like you wouldn't. I know people who've built their computers from scratch.
Same.
Sure.
Or
yeah.
and the same with cars. They've rebuilt cars like.
But the reality is,
But
we're
they
not like,
couldn't.
I quote built this workstation from scratch. I bought parts that
Yeah.
were already made and
Well,
I
yeah.
put the parts together. So the reality is
you cook your
Apple-
dinner, but you don't grow your food.
An app.
Yeah.
Well put. Apple does make some like proprietary chips and things, but I'm sure that there are also things in your iPhone or your MacBook that do come from
Intel.
other.
There is one
Intel,
that says,
right?
yeah,
Of course,
so
yeah,
that's
right.
a whole different company. So they
Yeah.
do, they like,
It probably
it's not
comes
all
together,
in-house.
Right.
You know,
But that's to your point though. Like even Intel, like you have to be a huge corporation because
Of
you're
course.
making a thing that is like an industry standard.
Yeah.
If you make a small part that's used in every laptop, I can't imagine you have a small business.
I would say manufacturing itself there's no small, unless you're like an Etsy
Totally.
Right.
shop
Crafts.
and you're making like little,
Handmade,
rings
yeah.
and the weed grandma. Shout out to the weed grandma.
Totally.
Wait,
Weed grandma.
who's the weed grandma?
She's a lady on Etsy who does
She's great.
she started smoking weed at 60 and just does all like weed
Oh.
macrames and crochet. But like it's people rolling joints. It's great.
Oh, maybe
Yeah.
maybe we should do like a small business spotlight and weed
Yeah,
grandma
yeah,
is our
Weed
first.
Grandma.
It's our
Weed
first.
grandma,
small
small
business
business.
Go to Etsy.com/weed.
I think,
Yeah.
it might be Weed Granny. It's something you'll find it though. You Google Weed Grandma.
She's pretty
She's
adorable.
cornered the market on the
Yeah.
weed grandma
Yeah.
brand.
We got a crochet thing of.
I didn't think so, and I just wanted to ask it because it kind of fits into what we're going to talk about later about capitalism, like modern capitalism and that sort of thing. And like, I'm just Matt brought up this story, and just looking at this, I'm like, it's not even like these workers essentially, these probably very very capable, smart workers. They really have no choice but to work for one of like 5 massive corporations that don't give a fuck about them, right? It's not like they can just go off and be like, you know what? I've made a little bit of money in my time. I'm going to start my own computer company or whatever. It's become such a
Monopolized.
Totally.
Yeah, but
And-
not necessarily by one company,
you
but
could-
by multiple.
I guess what they could do. They could start a business where they repair
yeah. Oh yeah.
your stuff and
Totally.
they're like they're in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
and they
Or consult.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
that makes sense.
But yeah, I think that side of it, the building
Yeah.
of things is.
I am struggling to find weed grandma on Etsy. The problem is when you search for it,
Ooh.
all of the items that say like I'm a
Uh-oh.
weed grandma and like a
Okay.
T-shirt, like all of those come up, but I can't find the seller.
I'll find it.
Yeah,
Oh,
you gotta
boy.
find. He's like, I gotta go into my Etsy back orders.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh,
I hope Weed Grandma made it through COVID.
Oh no! Hey, you take that back.
Jesus, James.
Wait, you think I don't have that kind of power? You think I can make that happen?
Well, you don't have the you can't kill an old lady.
Not with my words.
Not with your-
Not by saying it in hindsight.
No, I know you. I know you got little arms, but I.
Okay. Okay.
Is someone sensitive about his little arms?
No, I do
yes.
not. Listeners, I do not have little arms.
He has little
This is-
tiny arms.
I can fairly
This
say out of the
is-
3 of us, I am the scrawny little armed guy.
Yeah.
I have the noodles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No.
You're a very big, strong man, James.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's.
Kent University did well with you.
Thank you. Kent
Okay.
State.
I'll find this at a later time. I'm not going to find this live.
Okay.
Great.
I mean, I thought maybe it would have been a little easier.
Cool, guys. So what I want to talk about a little bit here in the first portion of this is I just want to talk a little bit more about something we started talking about last week, and I think it's going to be an ongoing thing that we're going to be discussing, which is the railway potential strike.
Yeah, we chatted a little bit about this last week.
Yeah,
About engineers and conductors.
totally.
Never bothered to figure out which one does what.
Yeah.
and what their jobs are.
Still don't know.
Still don't know. Never will.
But I do want to talk
We-
about a couple things.
We
here.
will stall the show for 5 minutes trying to find weed grandma.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we will not, and I say never
Yeah,
discover the difference between an engineer and a conductor.
never.
That is our good work promise.
So there has been a deal brokered, like we talked. The media's all over the place in this fucking story, man. They like so basically though, what's going on right now? First of all, if people are not aware, because I actually was not aware, I did a little bit of reading about this and was really surprised to find out how fucking huge the railway industry is. First of all, it is the most profitable industry in America.
Really?
The railroads are, yes. number one most profitable industry is the
What?
railways.
That's
yes.
I find that
And
really
what-
hard
now,
to believe.
Can we?
It makes more money
Wait.
than Silicon Valley.
What does the rail? Oh, fuck. That railway. What is that in? Is that subways?
No, that is 5 private companies.
Okay.
Okay. Union Pacific, BNSF, Canadian National, CSX, and Norfolk Southern are the 5 massive railway companies.
How much do they? Who the fuck? I mean, maybe I'm just who rides a train all the time.
My assumption
It's-
is that's
it's
like
literally
city, metro. Yeah.
Nobody rides it.
Oh,
It's all
commercial.
It's all commercial and delivery and
Right.
transportation of goods.
Right, yeah.
So, for
That makes
example,
sense.
BNSF Railway, which is a company I've never heard of before in my life, makes $23.3 billion a year. Is like their revenue. Union
Good
Pacific
God.
makes $21.8 billion a year. So you're talking about massive revenue, right? And just to give you an example of how huge this is, and it's been like this for a long time. Like, the railways were, the biggest, most profitable industry. I think in the 1800s, it was like 80% of the 80% of the
Workforce?
economy and
Gotcha.
workforce were. It was like,
Right.
well over
I can see that.
2 or
Yeah,
3
that-
totally
1800s.
same.
You're like, okay, everything was trains
Makes
back
it
then.
perfect
and also,
sense. Yeah.
they were literally laying track
Yeah.
across the entire nation.
Yeah, that was like
Yeah.
to me, that's the peak of trains. That
Trains
time.
really
And
really
then
hit their
after that,
stride.
it's like, who cares?
Totally. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with that. But they still are a huge they are a huge part
That's
of
wild.
our economy. And just sorry, I'm putting this link in here to give you guys just a little bit more, give our listeners a little bit more information about where we're at right now in terms of why they're striking. We talked a little bit last week of why they're striking, but there's more information here, which is back in 2000, right? 22 years ago. The average investor for the railways and CEOs and, kind of capitalists were receiving $15 per $100 of profit. They were getting, so basically 15% profit, right?
Okay.
That was in 2000. In 2022, they are receiving $41 in profit for every $100 profit made. Goes back. So basically, they're making, instead of 15%, they're getting 41%, and they took that away from the workers. They took that away from labor to give, back to the investors.
Yeah.
So not only is labor making way, way, way less money, they're working way harder. They're making more money for the companies.
Right.
And all of that money they're making for the companies are going straight into the pockets of the owners, the investor class, all of
God.
that.
Jeez.
It's real fucking gross. And it's not even just in this country. The UK is also on the verge of their railways collapsing because of a massive strike.
Wow.
And so where we're at right now, I think this is so gross. The Biden administration and Labor Secretary Marty Walsh are kind of like, taking a victory lap. They basically brokered this deal with the railway companies, and the workers hate it. 130,000 something workers, for the most part, fucking hate this deal that was just basically brokered between 12 union heads for 12 different unions, and Marty Walsh, Joe Biden, and then the corporate heads. And it really doesn't accomplish much. So there is still a massive chance that there could be a strike, a railway strike, which would, the implications of that, I think what would most likely happen is Congress would have to have an emergency session and pass a law and figure out a way to end the strike immediately, because
Right.
it would literally the economy would collapse.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. So it is a pretty interesting. We're gonna be following this close. It's still
Yeah,
a
I feel
pretty
like it's
interesting
a
thing.
kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
that I don't really see anybody talking about.
Yeah.
No.
Outside of like when I log into the Good Work Twitter and we only follow stuff about labor and stuff about but outside of that, if you're not cultivated, if you haven't cultivated an online presence that's paying attention to this sort of stuff,
Totally.
When is is there a deadline?
I was trying to find that myself. I can't find where the voting deadline is. I haven't seen where the deadline is exactly yet, but I'm pretty sure it's coming up pretty soon.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, when you say like, oh, if this were to occur, bye economy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the sort of things that are going to be affected by the strike.
Everything. Literally everything. There is not a single industry that would not be untouched.
We talked
Foods,
last year.
Everything.
Last year, the big thing was the supply chain.
Yeah.
Because of COVID and because of other crap that occurred with boats and all the other sort of shipping shit. Like, you figure any item that isn't made where you already live
100%.
and in a store that is nearby is going to have a hard time getting there. Is this going to be the best thing for the airlines? Airlines going to be like, yes, let's let them strike. We'll take all that business. We'll be flying Amazon boxes around.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be certain things you probably just can't even put on an airplane, right?
Sure.
Like that would just probably be too heavy or like not even worth
what
it.
What if I was trying to buy a train? How would it get?
How would you
buy train?
Maybe actually, probably the best time to do it because they're gonna be like, we need to cut some overheads.
We need to get rid of some of these trains. They're not making any money sitting still.
Honestly, that's a good point. Now is the perfect time maybe to buy your own train and start delivering goods. Like once the supply chain.
The problem is that you don't have access to the rail. You have to buy a train, then they're gonna take it off of the rail, bring it to wherever you want it to go. And you're just gonna be left with a train.
I'm gonna turn it into a restaurant.
yeah, like a diner.
Yeah,
that's fun. That's fun. I like
that. So I guess my first thought is like, all right, well, isn't everything also trucks? Can't trucks just carry crap? Is it about the speed? Is it about the trains?
It's got to be about the speed and the cost of the gas and stuff because it's more expensive to.
The overhead for gas and the worker of a driver.
And also, if you think about it, I bet you could put just so much stuff on a train.
Yeah, that's true.
I
would say not even if you think about it. If you don't think about it too much.
I think if you just go a quick broad assumption right on top of your head,
definitely you can put a lot of stuff on a train.
Like
that's how circuses got around.
See? And
a whole circus by train.
Think about how much
elephants, strong men,
tents,
bearded ladies,
poles.
You know how many clowns are in one train car?
You know how many fish people?
Half fish people.
Because they can't travel in a regular
train.
They
have mermaids.
To get No, I'm talking about the reverse. Legs with a fish head.
Love that.
Man. Yeah. Well, hopefully they get that shit worked out. And why did the union? Are they just fucking shady? Why did they agree to this deal? If they're supposed to be the representatives of
I think part of it is because it's like the railway unions don't kind of filter up into one like larger federation.
There's so many of them.
There's 12 of them.
Right. Yeah, and they got to get together.
They do have to get together, and that's been like kind of my whole belief. Is like we have to discover a way for all labor, for all employee classes to have some sort of
primary union. So the idea being that, like, for example, each little individual Starbucks union, eventually, hopefully, every single store in the country. It's going to come time where we need to have a nationwide union that they are all under. It's the equivalent of like IATSE in the entertainment industry. Or
100%.
Like we have, there are certain industries where we have this.
Yep.
The creative. What was that one that we talked about a couple weeks ago with that TV show, the kitchen one?
But
I forget the name of that. It's like creative services, creative services or something. But anyways, like
American Test Kitchen was
Yeah. But so like we need a U.S. and or the North American railway union.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Yeah, even stuff like Starbucks and Chipotle should be under some sort of food,
quick
beverage.
fast-
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
totally.
When I was talking about Starbucks, I'm thinking, oh, we need one big Starbucks. No, they all should
Should be under the
essentially.
same one as McDonald's.
Yes,
And you could have like the Starbucks union filters up into the food and beverage union,
Right, of
right,
course.
and then the fast food
they
filters
kind of
up,
break off like Hydra. Like there's like these you cut off one head, another grows back.
Exactly.
But a good
Hit
Hydra.
you.
But a good Hydra.
Oh, like a good Hydra, yes,
yeah,
definitely.
'cause the
A good
unions-
Hydra, Mr. Bond.
in this
unions
in-
are Hydra.
Yeah, in this instance, Mr. Bond is the corporate.
Yes, yeah, Mr. Bond is he's the British.
Yeah.
He's the fucking what's the MI5?
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's fine. There's just a notification. Nobody heard that except for you.
They're
my
listening.
computer made like a tone because I got a notification and everybody.
I thought you gave me a little sting after my James Bond. I was like, oh, we're doing that now. You got a little.
I'm leaving all that in. People are gonna be like, "What the hell are they talking about?"
Yeah.
Well, I hope that the railroad. Oh boy! Every time.
They gotta change
road.
the-
Railway is a weird
Railroad.
word.
No, railroad is the hard
even
one.
harder.
Railway
They're
is
both
easy.
tough. They're both tough for me.
Railroad.
I just like the word train.
The train workers,
The train people.
train peoples of America. I hope that they can sort this out for all of our sake, but also primarily so that they can not work a miserable job
Yeah, no kidding.
where they aren't allowed to have personal lives. This episode of Good Work is brought to you in part by The Chief, a New York City-based newspaper focused on municipal government, civil servants, and the important issues affecting New York State and federal employees. Visit thechiefleader.com, where you can subscribe for as little as $2.75 a month. Hey everyone, Jake Lloyd Bacon here.
Along with Paul Bianchi.
And Alexandra Hoy.
Hey, we all host different shows on Dragon Wagon Radio.
We do, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
Not at all. We are here to talk about Dungeons and Dragon Wagon.
A narrative podcast series in which we venture into a mythical land for a D&D inspired role-playing game.
Alexandra and I are joined by Matt Hinksman and a very special guest of quest for each chapter of an epic saga in which we must take on the roles of half-orcs, dark elves, and more as we fight our way through a fantastical land of peril, drama, and often hilarity.
All of which is controlled by me, the Dungeon Master, and the player's chance rolls of the die.
And our show is for everyone. Even if you know nothing about D&D or role-playing games, we've got you covered.
That's right, our game sessions are highly edited, easy to follow, sound designed from top to bottom, and completely immersive.
Yeah, our episodes sound more like a well-produced radio drama than an RPG show.
So what are you waiting for? Join the adventure on Dungeons and Dragon Wagon at dndwpod.com or wherever you find great podcasts.
Welcome back, workers. Before we get on to the rest of the program,
Oh, yeah.
you found it.
I found it. It's 420 Granny.
420
Granny.
So
Shout out to it. It's on Etsy.
Etsy.com/shop/420 Granny.
420. The number's not written
yes.
out.
Yes. So there you
So-
go. There is our small business shout out
Small business
420
spotlight shout
Granny.
out.
of the month, once every 2 months.
I'm so glad she's still with us.
Grandma Cindy. That's her name. Look at the picture that she has.
Oh,
What
man,
if
I
it's
love her.
actually? What if it's just some brilliant marketing person? It's just like some 20-year-old
It's
girl,
the
who's
head
just-
of
or some
Chipotle.
guy. No, is that a Chipotle? No,
Yeah.
from Green Bay, Wisconsin.
What if 420 Granny just has a bunch of like 8-year-olds in a factory just like making weed products
We
for
always
free?
we're so good at ruining nice things.
Yeah.
We're the best at it.
Yeah, we are.
Well, what did you want to talk about this week, James? You
Well,
said
speaking of ruining nice things,
something was on your mind.
Speaking of ruining nice things, I wanted to talk a little bit today with you guys about capitalism. And capitalism, I think in a lot of ways has ruined some nice things. But
Seamless segue.
Name one.
seamless
Name one.
culture, education,
Sport-
time on this earth,
sports.
sports, absolutely sports. Well, it's funny. I was having a conversation with a friend.
I think you're stepping on Matt's cable again.
Am I really?
Yeah. I just see like a disapproving
Oh,
nod.
my bad.
Well, I was sitting, my mic will just go.
Let me get. You know what it is I'm trying to get to a place where I can like see you and see
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
stuff.
with the couch in the Dragon's Den swallows you whole. So it really is it's quite comfortable unless you want a podcast.
That's true.
Perfect.
There is a chair here no one ever sits in.
Honestly,
I heard it was haunted.
I might.
Oh shit, really?
I
From
heard that
who?
chair was haunted.
It might be
Ghost
easier
Hunters.
for me to sit in that chair, maybe.
From Ghost Hunters?
For the
You
next
heard so
one.
Ghost Hunters did an episode on the Dragon Wagon
hmm
chair being haunted?
Yeah, it was a deleted episode.
How did you see it?
Huh? I know some of the Ghost Hunters.
Wow. All right. We're gonna have to revisit that at another time.
Don't- I'll never remember this conversation. There's no record of it.
All righty. For real this time.
All right, so for real, so I was having a conversation with a friend, and like a friend who's not like super, I would say like super politically savvy or
Minded. Like they just don't
minded,
care.
which is which is
Right.
totally fine, no judgment.
Some people have a lot of shit going on in their personal lives. I never blame them for being like,
Same.
I have enough of my own shit.
Same, yeah. But not like it's not like he's like a terrible. It just because he isn't into politics
Sure.
doesn't mean he's like a
He's-
terrible person.
He's not
or
a
anything.
Luddite. Yeah.
He's not, and he's not like a Nazi or anything. But
I mean, one would argue if he was a Nazi, he probably would be into politics.
yeah, would be. That's true. That's true.
Okay, so not a Luddite or a Nazi. I'm trying to guess who this person is.
Oh, he's
I
trying
don't
to
think,
figure
I
it
don't
out.
think you know this.
Okay.
person.
Okay.
that- yeah.
So
I like that you're like-
all your friends are Nazis.
Or-
That's why you're Luddites.
Or Luddites, yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah.
Venn diagram of James's friends in the middle. is
Luddites
tough.
and Nazis. So, and it made me realize, like, we were having this conversation, and he was like, I just think that he's like, I don't really know a whole lot about it, but I just feel like capitalism is just going to be like human beings will always naturally, societies will always naturally become capitalist, right?
Okay.
And which, I was like, man, that's a crazy thing to say considering like capitalism is, 400 years old and humans have been around for like 1 million years now.
Sure.
And we were talking more about it, and I kind of realized that I think that he thinks capitalism is just basically the exchanging of money.
He
for
thinks
goods.
it's economy.
It's economy.
right.
Exactly.
Which is not the same thing.
Totally. And it made me realize, like, a lot of people may not really, and I actually think it's not that easy to define. Any economic system there is so fluid, and there's like a
Right.
spectrum to it. But a lot of people may not fully understand what capitalism means or
Right.
what it is. So I thought it would be beneficial to like maybe talk a little bit about what capitalism is. It's kind of the same thing with socialism. People think socialism just means when the government pays for things.
Right.
And that's actually not socialism. If the
Right.
government is paying for things in a capitalistic society, that's called welfare capitalism. And that is
Right.
a form of capitalism where, like in Iceland or Denmark, they tax the capitalists to give back to the workers in a welfare type of situation.
Right.
So I wanted to talk just a little bit, just so I think people could understand what capitalism is.
Like what? Like I have the actual definition because I was curious to how people define capitalism.
Yeah.
The definition of capitalism is an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit
Yeah.
rather than by the state. So by that definition, that does seem like, oh yeah, it's an economy not run by the government.
And
By that definition, I go like, yeah, capitalism seems fine.
but that is actually, I would say that definition
one
is
more time.
incorrect.
You want to read the direct definition one more time?
Yeah.
Okay. An economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state.
So my
Okay.
my problem with that definition is that
Where's your source? Is that Merriam-Webster?
Wikipedia.
Oxford?
Oh, wait. Oh, no. What is it? Oxford. Yes.
Oxford? Okay.
Oxford.
so, and this is actually I think a lot of this is actually kind of a a point of, I think, controversy within like the international political kind of discourse. I actually think that the state can't own. I don't view that as the antithesis to capitalism. I actually think the state exists because it needs to uphold the hierarchies of capitalism. And when the state owns, the means of production, like for example, I think there's a big argument about like what exactly is China, right? The country of China, is it capitalist? Is it socialist? Is it, some people say it's, following this Marxist, Leninist, Maoist sort of direction of socialism. China claims they'll be fully socialist in 2049, like all these different things.
But it's also sort of an oligarchy. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Well, I think it's a state. I think it's state capitalist.
Oh, right. Okay.
Which is the same thing that the USSR became, right? Which is, if socialism is the workers owning the means of production, right?
Okay.
Then if the state comes in, overthrows capitalism, and then just gives the means of production to other government officials,
right,
instead of the workers, that's not socialism,
right?
That's state capitalism. And so but
that's what you said, right?
Well, yeah,
no,
but the idea,
but the definition was
of capitalism.
But I would say the state owning the means of production is still capitalism,
right? Where he's saying that this is sort of, and I think in the the Oxford definition,
but if this is the definition,
for profit, I think it's maybe the reality is that the meaning of the word has changed throughout the years.
Yes,
that's what I think.
Or the emphasis of this definition should not necessarily be controlled by private owners versus state, but instead about the profit and the profit margins.
Correct.
Because the reality, I feel like, is in a true capitalist society, it's about the profit and not about the work. Whereas one could argue that in technically capitalism should be, we all make a lot of money.
Right.
But the reality is unfortunately capitalism is a few people make all the money.
Yes.
And we barely get anything, the working class, essentially.
Yes. And that is, and like the word is right there, right? Capital. Like I think capitalism is this, like, it's a combination of a bunch of different things. Private property and ownership of private property, not personal property. That's not your house. That's not your car. Private property is the ability to own an industry, a company, right? And make kind of like dictatorial type of decisions about that industry.
Okay. So a president of a company.
Can
CEO,
act as a totalitarian, for the most part, depending on what kind of capitalism. Because there's also different kinds of capitalism, right? And they exist all over the world. There's laissez-faire, there's welfare capitalism, there's state capitalism, and I guess libertarian capitalism or anarcho-capitalism.
Libertarian capitalism does sound like capitalism. I mean,
100%.
That's the one where I don't see how one could possibly label the other.
Well, it's like the conservatives now are coming out and saying, like, our current state of capitalism is called corporatism, where we just corporations kind of run everything. And like, I mean, they're not wrong about us living in kind of a corporate dictatorship, but that's also exactly what capitalism has always been predicted to do, right? Which is when you have the accumulation of capital, right? You develop all this money and power, you are then able, the idea of a free market is not real.
Well, and there's a little bit of like it's that old trope that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
Where like the idea being that anybody who truly succeeds at capitalism and truly gets to a point where they have that much power, the guy that we talked about last week, the owner of Patagonia, there's for every one of him, there's 1,000 people who are just like, no, I just want more for myself. I want to make this even bigger.
Totally.
I want to destroy the market. I want to monopolize and ensure that I only ever get more wealthy.
Yeah.
And is that your friends, your Nazi friends? Does he think that that's the
the goal.
That's the natural way that
Yes.
humans
Right.
will go. Is
Yes.
and I
I kind of don't disagree with him.
yeah, I
I
think
mean-
he's right because if we're going by pure lizard brain,
Sure.
and we're
sure.
like we need to get more resources. That's our
Right.
goal always
Right.
is to get more, just in case we never know what bad winter's coming. There's this inherent, and it's constantly fighting against it to not be greedy and
Right.
not.
Yeah, I will say this though, is like you did in your argument to your Luddite friend. You said, "Well, I find that take crazy because people have been around for millions of years,
Yeah.
and capitalism is 400 years old." I think
the name of it is.
sure, but I think ultimately he's kind of right, and I think technology and the leaps in technology has made it so much easier for the hardcore for-profit, dictator style capitalists to do what they do efficiently. Technology is making the 1% more rich and creating a larger divide
Totally.
because it's so much easier for them to make money, so much easier for them to sell. It's so much easier to keep
Right.
the working class essentially oppressed and buying, keep them down and buying. I want them to make little money and give what they have to the things that make us more money. And I think technology's made that so easy that until we can figure out how to have the state, have the governing body of whatever country, state, whatever you are in, figure out a way to put the limits on that so that we have a, quote, free market to a point where you are no longer able to abuse the free market, then I actually agree with your friend. I don't think it's ever going to change.
Well, let's talk about let's talk about historical materialism for a second because
here we go.
I think like
Historical materialism.
yeah. Have you never heard of historical?
No, I've never heard of
materialism?
that term.
Okay, so this is basically.
I assume this is about like all the shit that the UK royal family just has that they've just taken from other countries.
historical.
Yeah, this is all
that's
their
funny.
historical materialism. It's like, no, you guys
Yeah.
you countries can't have this stuff back because I like it and it's shiny.
Yeah.
They are historically materialistic.
But so materialism is not materialistic, right? Materialism, there's two kind of major, if you look at philosophy, there's two kind of major hubs of philosophical thinking, idealism and materialism, right? And materialism, well, let's start with idealism. Idealism is basically the idea that human ideas are the driving aspect of our world, of our universe.
Hopes and dreams.
Correct.
Right.
Idealists tend to be kind of like more spiritual, more religious. Idealists tend to be more into the kind of like, you'll hear it all the time, like don't be weak, don't be soft, like that humans are essentialists and we're essentially supposed to be this certain thing, right?
Okay.
Materialism is a philosophy that basically, it's also called physicalism. Materialism is basically philosophically that matter is the driving force of the universe.
Physical, tactile,
everything
golds,
in the
minerals, and
is-
aluminum, and
well, even down to
People.
our brains.
got it.
Our brains are not, our brains are physical. Our brains are made up of all of these, physical things. That,
So essentially, it's tangible
Except
versus
for quarks. Quarks are not physical,
quarks.
right? Quarks. Isn't that the way down? Isn't that like the micro, like subatomic stuff that you can be in two places at once? So then at that point, you gets to the metaphysical.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
oh, I don't even know what a quark is.
A
Yeah.
quark? Q-U-A-R-K?
Oh, Oh, yeah. I've heard of them.
Oh.
I don't know.
Quark.
But is
Quark.
it not?
It's not physical.
It's not. There's no physical. It does. It's
It can move
matter.
between space and time instantly.
But is it a part of a human thought then?
Huh?
Is it part of thought?
No, it's part of your. It's what makes us up.
So
I-
then it
I
has
need to
be
start doing
physical.
No,
drugs.
we're not physical. That's the point. I'm not touching you.
Now you
I'm
just
not
sound like
touching you.
Oh,
They
I
just
see
sound
what
like
you're
brothers.
saying. I
You know
see
what
what
I
you're
mean?
saying. Yeah.
No, that would be this. I'm not touching you.
Yeah,
But no,
yeah.
I'm saying even when you do this,
Right.
There's always space between everything.
Sure,
so
right.
we just imagine. I'm getting real stonery and weird with
Yeah,
this.
this-
With this
this took a
like,
hard turn.
Yeah.
physical with like
well,
if
let
our
me-
brains are physical, then
Yeah.
I'm like, well, then our thoughts are our brains.
Well, that's the whole thing. Is our thoughts? What are our thoughts? Where do they come from? What like, and that's been a constant conversation for a very, very long time, right? to get back to historical materialism. And if you want like a basic kind of understanding of it, of the two different ideas, there's this kind of like famous philosophical question, which is, if a tree fell in the woods and nobody was
sound,
does it make a sound? An idealist would say, no, it doesn't, because a human is not there to hear it. A materialist would say, of course it makes a sound, because sound is made of sound waves, and sound waves travel.
Am I a materialist then? Because I think it definitely does make a sound.
I mean, it's a really, really basic,
Right,
you
yeah.
know, but I think like, that's for you to discover on your own.
Oh
right?
boy, it's a real Schrodinger's cat situation.
Yeah. So back to what this all means about capitalism.
Yes, please.
Right. So historical materialism, at the time that capitalism was starting to arise, there was this guy in Europe named Karl Marx. And Karl Marx had started off as a Hegelian philosopher, right? Hegel was this German philosopher who believed in this thing called dialectical idealism. He was an idealistic thinker that believed that dialectics was the driving force of the universe, right?
Dialectics meaning
Opposites, meaning basically thesis, antithesis, right?
okay.
And then a synthesis of the two. That
All right.
all the universe is based off of something offers, but his was idealism, and but basically the idea that like something offers a thesis, always there's an antithesis or the opposite of it,
right.
and those two things in the universe always come together as a synthesis. It's not like a new idea. It's pretty much yin and yang.
I was gonna say it sounds like yin yang.
It's totally yin and yang, but he broke it down into like a really hard to understand German philosopher way.
real
right?
dense
Well,
German.
I think Aristotle talked about having like a balance between what the fuck was the word? But it's like you can't, like, if you're too kind, you're a pushover. You can't be too kind
Right.
or too stern. Like you had to always
Totally.
have that balance.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what was it?
But the synergy that you're talking
Yes,
about.
yeah.
Always
I
come
think
together.
that's an old.
And so Hegel felt like that was the entire universe, but it was all idealistic, right? And he was like a very religious man. And Karl Marx was a huge student of his, but at the same time, he was also an economy student, really studying British economics. He was also really studying French socialists and socialist sciences, and also evolution, right? He was a big fan of Charles Darwin and evolution. And so Karl Marx believed in dialectics, but not idealism. He believed in dialectical materialism,
Okay.
which is basically everything is thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis, but with matter,
Right.
with
but it's
the
not
physical.
ideas.
Correct.
It's not debate
Not
over
ideas.
ideas, but actually that there is a physical opposite
Correct.
to every physical, and they will come together and
Correct.
be a new thing.
And so from this aspect,
All right, Matt. To put it into, because I saw that and I don't disagree, but I think I'm getting it. The best metaphor for this.
Oh, I get
is-
it. I think
oh.
it's weird.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I
I'm
was
not
trying
100% on board, but I get it. I'm just
Right,
like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a strong stance.
I was just gonna say anyway. It's like the best metaphor I could think of is children. You have a physical item and a person, a physical item and another person. They come together. They have created a synergy, which is this child.
yeah, totally.
You have a big asteroid, and then you have a big hole for that asteroid to fall into, and they come together and they make a flat surface.
Did you like the Earth, like the flat Earth? that we're talking
Yeah.
about? Okay.
Well, the flat Earth.
No, I don't know.
Are you still on that again? I said, so everything has an opposite, right? Is that what he's saying?
Correct. Everything in the and not even just everything, but like dialectical materialism is the idea that the universe is constantly shifting and changing, and it's always shifting and changing based off of the dialectic nature of things,
Okay.
right? Which, like, if you think about a lot of different things, I think that it makes sense. And I'm not saying that this is correct. I'm not saying this is incorrect. I'm getting to a place back to capitalism, right? And this is kind of all leading up to what historical materialism is. So, as a result of this, Marx was a big believer in, and a lot of socialists at the time were as well, that human history must, because as a materialist, human history must be told through the lens of context, right? Not, he was very much against great man theory.
Right.
The idea that human history is made up of
There's
great,
a good person and
Exactly.
a bad person, and the
Yeah.
good person defeated the bad
Idealists believe in good and evil, and materialists believe in context. And what would you do in that context,
Right.
right?
Survival. And,
Exactly,
and
yeah.
the drive of what we've talked about is capitalism.
Because
Greed,
we're-
your lizard brain, essentially.
Exactly,
Right.
because we're animals, and so if that's the case, that the history of the world has to be told through context, then a massive part of what we do as humans and as societies is based in who owns the means of production, right? And throughout history, that has dictated, because if the means of production and who owns them provides you with things like food, shelter, water, all the
needs,
basic human needs, and then some, that will dictate culture, that will dictate art, that will dictate,
Right.
education, dictates everything, society.
It's the railroad industry of the 1800s. That's what we're
Correct.
talking about how
Exactly.
the railroad industry, they controlled the means of production.
Yeah.
And therefore life was about, you said,
Yes.
like Matt said earlier, that was a peak time for railroads and trains because it dictated the entire culture of society.
Yeah. And so he used Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. He used his theory of historical materialism, and he started to study the evolution of societies, right? Sorry, buddy.
It's okay.
He started to study the evolution of societies, and what he discovered is that all of human history has basically followed a very, very simple economic system, right?
Okay.
There's the ancient primitive economic system, which is slavery, which we existed in for a very, very long time. And this is all after the agricultural revolution, because up until that point, we existed pretty much in anarchist, almost like, communist hunter-gatherer types of communities. But
Okay.
once we started to accumulate materials and
have access.
means
So
of-
essentially
exactly.
have more than you need for your own survival.
Exactly. When we had surplus materials, that's when things started to change, and we had to decide who owns the surplus. And so you had slavery, and then after slavery, you had feudalism, and after feudalism, you have capitalism, and then in his study of the evolution of things, he discovered that after capitalism comes socialism, and then after socialism comes communism, and kind of this, moneyless, governmentless type of society. But one of the things,
And he thinks it's inevitable because of evolution.
correct,
Right.
because of evolution, he believes it's inevitable, and that if you look at the history of how we transitioned from each one, right, two things happen. One, society changes when we get these like ruptures or fissures, because tension, a part of the dialectical materialism is it creates contradiction, right? Thesis, antithesis.
Right. The two sides creating something,
Correct.
meeting
It
in the
creates
middle.
it creates these contradictions, and sometimes when the contradictions get too great, you get these aneurysms in society, these changes, right? You could start to think of like maybe the French Revolution,
Right.
the American Revolution,
Or even civil rights.
civil
movement.
rights,
Yeah.
the Civil War, all these
Right.
things, right? And then we have some sort of shift, and each time that we shift, another part of society gains a new level of liberation or freedom that they never had before.
Right.
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 So as we worked from slavery to feudalism, a whole new sect of society had freedoms that they never had before. Right. Now, that's not everybody. That's just one.
Of course.
Right. One sect of society got moved up. Then from feudalism to capitalism, right? Suddenly the bourgeoisie, the
Right.
merchant class, the small business class, the bankers, suddenly they got a new liberation and freedom that
From a monarch.
exactly.
Right.
Now the proletariat, the working class, the employee class, who we talk about all the time, that's who's left on the bottom in capitalism.
Right.
And based off of Karl Marx's theory of historical materialism, and again, I am not an expert in this. I am just
Interested party.
An interested party.
Yeah.
But based off of his theory of historical materialism, at some point, a fissure or aneurysm or something will happen to then lift up the proletariat back into liberation and freedom the way it has for the bottom rung every single time that we've kind of like shifted economies. And that once that happens, after capitalism, the next logical place
is
socialism, where the workers own the means of production.
What's after that?
Communism.
What's after that? Oh, that's the final thing?
That's the final stage.
That was Marx's, the perfect society was it to him, right?
Well,
he did.
Remember, he didn't see anything on good or bad.
No,
it's not about perfect society. It's about the
what
society that is what the lizard brain, as you put it earlier, essentially becomes. It's about the survival instinct.
He was very much like he was very much like an observer and scientist of like, he pretty much helped create the idea of like sociology, which is a very social science today, had, I think, a lot of interesting perspectives.
He had some problems, right?
Karl Marx?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Huge problems.
I remember, yeah.
I like that you said that as if he was like a friend of ours. Like,
listen, a little bit of a drinker, I think.
I hear he's a Luddite and a Nazi.
Huge alcoholic. Sounds like he probably abused his wife. But, I mean...
But it wasn't evil. He didn't believe in it. He didn't believe in it being evil. He was not good or evil. He just did it.
Right. Yeah. Of course. He wasn't a bad guy.
I'm not a bad guy.
Or a good guy.
I'm a good guy. I just...
An act can be evil.
Sure, of course. I think he's...
But even if you were to say,
I'm just
like...
fucking around.
What's that?
I'm just fucking around.
Oh, yeah. So to me, when somebody says... And look, like I'm not somebody that I wouldn't consider myself some sort of like, orthodox Marxist or anything like that personally, because like that dude existed in the 1840s and it's like a different world now.
Sure,
although a lot of what he predicted about capitalism has come true.
I'm curious to how his work and his study and his philosophies translate to the modern society with modern technology.
Totally.
Because I do feel like that is the great interrupter.
Yeah.
Technology, I think,
for sure.
Which is why, and maybe it's me being a cynic and me not being a hopeful person, which is why I lean more in alignment with your friend of saying, no, capitalism is just going to be the way it is, because I think technology has made it to where they have unlimited power. By they, I mean the managerial, or not the managerial class, the capitalist class.
Yeah.
Whereas in the world where maybe Marx can project in his mind, he couldn't imagine the power. He could only imagine, the trains and the like basic means of material production.
Yeah.
Well, the technology makes sense to me, but in terms of idealism, I guess my question would be, if humans were essentially that, if we are essentially bad, why did we make it out of slavery? In terms of why were we able to make our way out of government-sanctioned slave economies?
Sure.
And discover something not great in feudalism, but still better than slavery.
And like you said, the evolution, the ball is consistently moving.
Sounds like you have hope.
And in every stage,
I do have hope.
So idealism.
Idealism is not...
You said hopes and dreams, right? Is that what you said?
I meant that as just that's what idealism is as thought. But
hope is emotion.
Yeah,
emotion again is I would not view that as idealism. Idealism to me is more based in the idea that like, if I hope enough and hard enough, it'll happen, right? Or
it's only based in. It's just based in wishes.
Pretty much. I mean,
if you're an idealist and you work for something, but you think it's going to be a certain way, is that not?
But if you work for something, what is the physical manifestation? What does it do in order?
But you're doing that because of your ideals,
right? And that's the big question. But then you go, what created the ideals? Was it the context? Was it the physical?
But then we're back to quarks.
Or are you?
I just want to tell everybody. I don't know exactly what a quark is.
Yeah, me neither.
I went to sleep listening to Bill Bryson's audiobook of History
it was like
of
in
Everything.
Your dreams,
and he talked about quarks, and he talked about light being not physical, both physical and like a wave and a particle, and it was fucking trippy. And it basically there's time is not linear. Also, I've been listening to a lot of like
Totally.
people slipping in time slips. Have you heard about that? People slipping in time.
No.
There's a place in Liverpool where a lot of time slips happen.
I did just watch
The
Time
Beatles?
Bandits, though, the movie Time Bandits.
Time
from the
Bandits, but
80s,
there's a
so
place
for
where
sure.
people are just in Roman times for a brief moment, and they see a bunch of Roman soldiers walking by, and then they go fucking away. All I'm saying is we don't know what quarks are.
I feel like but they're not idealists, right? Like quarks, whatever they are not idealists. I think idealism is, and again, not an expert here, but to me, idealism is is basically like what comes first, human ideas or context is
Right.
the way I break it down. And to me, like, I think that our ideas come from our context first.
Yeah, I
Who
mean,
we
they have
are
to.
as people, right?
And the context tends to come from the society, which one could argue is tangible.
Is real chicken and an egg thing.
Yeah,
It kind of
Yeah,
is.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
But-
and that's been the whole, like, because again, I'm not smart enough to say if Hegel was right or if Marx was right, but that is kind of the two major, and most philosophies derive from one of those two sides, idealism or materialism. It's really, really interesting, and I'll never be smart enough to understand it. But my point is, the thing I wanted to bring up is just that to speak to what you were saying here, Jake, about like, you don't see us ever getting out of this with technology.
Yeah.
I mean, like, maybe not us,
Right.
Like,
Okay.
human evolution is a long fucking time,
right.
right? And so,
I mean, we're not lasting.
well,
100 years.
I think capitalism might, yeah. I mean,
I'm saying the people
Totally,
aren't
yeah.
lasting. And
I
then
know.
it's just the Earth is going to.
Totally.
Sure. Yeah,
Totally.
the Earth might beat us to the next evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is another
Right.
potential huge
Right.
possibility, right? I just think it's interesting that, I don't know if capitalism is the natural state of what human beings would go to, is I guess
Right.
what my point is.
I don't think anybody. I mean, again,
It's interesting.
Marx's ideas are they're rooted in logic in a way that I hear it and I go, yeah, no, that does make sense to me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will hear this and go, oh, communism bad. If communism is what's
Right.
after socialism, then socialism must be bad too.
Right.
I like
Because,
that you think a lot of people are going to hear this.
Well, that's the funny thing too, is like people think communism has existed in the modern. It has not
Right.
existed.
Right.
There is no, China is not a stateless or
no.
moneyless or hierarchically hierarchicalless society, right?
Railroad.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I get it. Well, yeah, it's fascinating. I can't wait till find out which one of you is right.
Yeah. And if you're listening to this, look into this stuff. Tell us what you think. Idealism. Are you idealist? Are you a materialist?
Are you into quarks? I'm into quarks.
Are you quarks? I want to learn more about quarks. I wanna
They're
learn.
subatomic electric. I'm going to
He's looked it
look
up.
right now.
All right.
They're
You can look that up while we start the wrap out.
All right,
But we'll
perfect.
end it. We'll end it with the definition of quarks.
oh hell yeah. All right.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. Thanks for listening. For all things Good Work, please visit goodworkpod.com. There you can find official merchandise. Snag yourself a shirt, snag yourself a mug. You can find links to our personal social media accounts, as well as the Good Work Twitter, which is @GoodWorkPod. You can also find a link to the Discord community so you can join the conversation. That is all at goodworkpod.com. And of course, you can email us at goodworkpod@gmail.com or call the Good Work voicemail box at 929-256-5151. That's 929-256-5151. And of course, rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
You just taking it all.
If you could. Well, I figured I thought you were researching.
I'm
Take
ready,
it
baby.
all.
I'm ready, baby.
Well, there it is. You know the rest. We'll end it with quarks.
A quark, any of a number of subatomic particles carrying a fractional electric charge, postulated as building blocks of the hadrons. The hadron, heard that? The Hadron Collider in Sweden.
Yeah.
Quarks have not been directly observed, but theoretical predictions based on their existence have been confirmed experimentally. So it's just kind of thing like, we think they're there.
This show is a quark.
What? You're a quark.
Your mom's a quark.
Good quark. Good quark, everyone.
Good quark.
Good quark.
It's Dragon Wagon.